Okay, you guys, let's start with benefits and services. Good afternoon on Thursday. It's what everyone's been waiting for the last 2 days. This is the star of the show, really, because it really is, actually. It's the benefits and services for our members. I was just talking to some folks outside about remembering Carolyn Widener, who was my mentor and predecessor on the board, and she always made sure that we made benefits and services the star of the board, because I know Harry's watching today, and Harry would second me on that, I'm sure. So, all right. So I believe, hi, Chris. I don't think I've met you yet. Chris, nice to meet you. Chris, could you go ahead and take a roll and make sure we have a quorum for our Benefits and Services Committee?
For the State Superintendent of Public Instruction, Mr. Johnson.
Here.
Ms. Yamamoto.
Here.
Mr. Tang.
Here.
Ms. Bradford.
Here.
For the State Treasurer, Mr. Ruffino.
Present.
For the Director of Finance, Ms. Miller.
Here.
Chairperson Hendricks, you have a quorum.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Our first item is the approval of the committee agenda. Oh, sorry.
Now I will read a statement about public comment.
Yes, please read the statement. Thank you, Chris.
The CalSTRS board meetings are live web-streamed, video archived, and available to the public on calstrs.com. Individuals who wish to address the board should wait for the 10-minute public comment period at the end of the agenda item the speaker wishes to address. For comments not pertaining to a specific agenda item, there will be an opportunity for additional statements at the end of the open session. Each speaker is allowed a maximum of 3 minutes to comment. However, if there is not enough time for each speaker to have 3 minutes, the timing will be at the discretion of the chair. To protect the privacy of speakers under the age of 18 who wish to address the board, only their first name and affiliated organization may be provided, but other personal identifying information such as their last name, age, or school may not be shared.
Thank you, Chris. Appreciate that. Our first item is approval of the committee agenda. Is it moved? Second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? We have an agenda. Thank you, everyone. Our second item is the minutes from May 3rd. It's on consent. Unless Karen has any edits, we will take it. They've all been in. This is what I want to hear. I love it. This is music to my ears. She's doing it ahead of time now. I love this. What a well-functioning board we are. Great. Thank you, Karen, for that. Always count on you. Perfect. So we have just a couple. We have actually just one item today, but it's always one of my favorites, Tom Buffalo. Love having you come. And I think it's been mentioned a couple of times today that it's really important to hear from our members. And so really excited to have you share with us our 2023 member survey. So Tom, I will hand it to you. And if there are questions, we'll let Tom get through his presentation, and then feel free to queue in with any questions or comments afterwards. So Tom.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon, members of the committee. Tom Buffalo, Head of Research at CalSTRS, and these are the results of the 2023 member survey. This is an annual effort. It goes out every year in January, open for 3 weeks. And roughly 2,800 members responded. 3,800 members responded, of which 2,600 were active members and 1,200 were retired members.
Wait, can you say it again?
3,800 members responded, 2,600 roughly were active, and then 1,200 were retired.
Out of how many? Sorry, you probably have it written down somewhere. But...
Yeah, in the item, I can look it up if you want.
That's okay. That's all right.
Some quick demographics on the survey response. I always like to look at the top category there, the top grouping there. The age of our youngest member is 29, and our oldest was nearly 100. You know, every year we see more and more members achieving that milestone, and so it's just very nice to see that members of that age are interacting with us. This is a digital survey. It's delivered over email, and they're responded to over email or over the internet. And so it's nice to see members of that age interacting with us digitally. Also, to the right of that, just the maximum service credit for one of the respondents was 50 years. Just remarkable stamina from that member.
I think that was the English community college professor from my college. I think he just retired at 95.
So yeah, well done to that member. And then also just this is the response is representative of our membership. And so that's the main point here. So right out the gate, the very first question on the survey is, how satisfied are you with CalSTRS overall? Our common scoring is anywhere from 1, which would be, say, completely dissatisfied, all the way up to 7, completely satisfied. What we register and what we measure is what we call the top two box. So this would be those who answered either a 6 or a 7 to this question. Like I said, this is the first question out the gate to try to just get that gut reaction from the members without any additional influence from additional survey questions. And so here we actually did see a decrease from the prior year, from 69% down to 64%. This decrease, or this current level at 64%, is not unprecedented. If we were to go further back in time, what we're seeing, or what I've seen from other data as well, is that we seem to get this sort of increase over the COVID years, and then we're now returning to more of kind of a normal state in terms of some of the scoring on some of these measures. But this did register as statistically significant, and as such, decided we needed to look into what may have been driving this outcome this year. And so what we learned, one of the most significant drivers in satisfaction is confidence. And the question that we asked members is, how confident will you be, or how confident are you that you will have enough money to live comfortably throughout your retirement years? And they answer anywhere from not at all confident, somewhat confident, and then very confident. And then again, we measure the top two box. Now to clarify, this isn't confidence in CalSTRS, it's not confidence in the system, confidence in the fund. The question is meant to elicit the response, how confident are you kind of overall giving the prospects that you have? So it would include, for example, CalSTRS, but then also additional savings, household income, household savings, maybe a spousal savings, spousal retirement plan. So this is the member, we presume, looking forward and saying how confident I am that I'm going to have enough money to live comfortably in my retirement years. A couple of trends that are common here: retired members are more confident than active members. And also we saw a decrease here. So in both cases, from active going from 38% responding as either confident or very confident, down to 35%, and then for retired members, 75% down to 71%. And in looking further at this, we gave the respondents an opportunity to identify some different variables that might actually be driving this confidence down in this case. The two things that they identified were the state of the economy and then a category, other unplanned expenses, which to me kind of signaled as almost like a proxy to probably the inflationary environment. So you think about what was going on in January and really all of our lives. There was potentially a recession, predicted. We were just coming off a year of increased inflation that was probably starting to affect pocketbooks. And so it's not surprising that we would see confidence go down. And then, like I said, satisfaction is sensitive to this confidence measure. And then the two groups that saw the biggest reduction in confidence were our ages 40 to 49 respondents, and then also our newly retired. Now, the 40 to 49 that's a group that I call they're achieving retirement consciousness. If they're reading our materials, they're probably seeing things like, wow, I could maybe even retire as early as 55, with 5 years of service. I'm close. And so maybe prior to that, as a 20-year-old or a 30-year-old, you're thinking just about the accumulation. But at age 40, that may be kind of where you start, like I said, achieving that retirement consciousness. Also, at the same time, you've been in the career for a little bit, likely have a family, likely have sort of the highest debt load of any of the categories with a mortgage, auto loan, probably student loans still lingering there, potentially, paying for college on the horizon. So this group in particular, the 40 to 49s, who may consider themselves being like, oh, wow, I'm sort of waking up to the retirement prospect, they also registered the lowest level of confidence amongst all of the groups. And so, like I said, the satisfaction member, that one individual measure is sensitive to the member's response to confidence, and confidence went down. And so it looks like that's what brought that satisfaction measure down with it. Now, deviating from the survey data, this is separate. This is data from Chief Benefits Officer Bill Perez and his staff. Now, this is point of service satisfaction from members. So this specifically is when members interact with our call center, and then they have an opportunity to take a survey following that. What is their level of satisfaction? And it's very, very high, right? And this is based on 43,000 responses. So from a numbers perspective, if we go back to the survey data, roughly 3,800 responses, and we do our best to measure and test and extrapolate out from there. But this point of service data is very strong, and in my opinion, this is probably the stronger measure indicating the true north of what member satisfaction is, because when they interact with us, their satisfaction is higher, and here they're telling us directly that, I was highly satisfied with the CalSTRS representative that I worked with. And this isn't the only data point that's like this. We have, of course, benefits counselors, and following those sessions, there's a 92% confident, or a 92% satisfaction rate there. Members who go through the retirement process and they respond to the survey that we have for that, that's an 88% satisfaction rate. And so, like I said, this is a stronger signal and probably more indicative of where member satisfaction is overall with CalSTRS. So just to maybe assuage some of the concerns about that decrease in initial satisfaction, point of service satisfaction is very high. We also have an item set we refer to as engagement item set. These engagement, and we calculate a score, which I'll show you on the second slide. But engaged members tend to be more engaged. They speak highly of the organization, positively about the organization, maybe likelier to try different products and services. So what we do is we have this full item set. We take 4 items from this set, going across the top there. I feel confident my retirement is secure. I know CalSTRS operates in my best interest. CalSTRS acts ethically. And then in the bottom row, the middle one, CalSTRS sends communications relevant to my needs. So we take those 4 items, we add satisfaction, we take an average score, and then I'll show you the calculation in the next slide. But again, trust is the highest scoring item here. So members' trust in CalSTRS remains high, and it's the highest scoring item of all of our engagement items. Okay, so back to this engagement concept. We calculate a score. We just take an average for each member. And the cut points are such: if they score higher than a 5.5 across those 5 items as an average, we consider them engaged. If they score between 2.5 and 5.5, we would consider them neutral, or kind of a swing, can go either way. And then if it's 2.5 or less, then we consider them disengaged. So here is the average score for CalSTRS members is right up against that swing to that engagement, 5.43. But on the whole, 55% of members are engaged and scoring higher than 5.5 on that particular metric. And this is a proprietary metric that we created to try to measure the relationship over time with CalSTRS members. Going back, now this is actual survey data back to, reference to some of the point of service. At least 8 out of 10 members are saying that when they interacted with staff, they were courteous, knowledgeable, displayed a caring attitude, understand my questions or concerns, took the appropriate action, and was just knowledgeable about what I was asking about. So again, to reinforce that point of service data, the high satisfaction there, that's reiterated here with the member response, survey response to their interaction with staff. So I'd say well done to the staff for just taking good care of our members, being knowledgeable, courteous, and just achieving a high level of satisfaction from our members. Same with service. At least 7 out of 10 members say that CalSTRS, answered my response in a timely manner. Answers to my questions were thorough. Information was easy to understand. Follow-through was good. Multiple sources was consistent. So again, from the staff and the service performance perspective, members are rating CalSTRS staff very well there. Another measure that we use, we adopted this a few years ago, and this has a little more universal applicability beyond the engagement score that we calculate. It's called Net Promoter Score. We borrowed this. It's used primarily in the private sector. Bain created this back in the early 2000s. It's a little different scale than what we normally use. Essentially, the question is, how likely are you to recommend product XYZ to a friend or family member? So it would be like maybe your bank or your internet provider would send you this type of a question and say, how likely are you to recommend Comcast, for example, to a friend or family member? The respondent answers anywhere from 0, which is not at all likely, up to 10, which is very likely. And then the way the score is calculated, again, we just adopted this methodology, didn't change it. The way the score is calculated is you take those who answered 9 and 10, and you subtract those who answered 0 to 6. And you get this score essentially anywhere from -100 all the way up to 100. And then those who answered 7 or 8, they're really not included here, I guess, in the calculation. The 9s and the 10s are referred to as promoters. The 0 through 6s are referred to as detractors, and then the 7 and 8s are referred to as the passives. So it's similar to engagement. If you have a higher net promoter score as an individual consumer, you're more likely to try products and services and recommend them. Now, CalSTRS doesn't necessarily compete in like a competitive marketplace in that sense. And so we augmented the question somewhat to now read, how likely are you to recommend / promote CalSTRS as a great organization? So we tried to make it a little more applicable to the environment that we're operating in, so to speak. But the reason that I like using Net Promoter Scores, one, it sort of smooths out some of that additional, some of the external influences that we saw from some of those exogenous variables like confidence. But also on top of that, you'll see that the score this year is 16. So again, it's essentially just the 44% of the promoters minus the 28% of the detractors. That's how you get a score of 16. And then if you're asking yourself, well, what does 16 actually mean? Here's just a sampling of different companies out there. Maybe you've had your own experiences with them. Again, this is kind of publicly available data, and so it's nice to be able to see at least with this particular measure where CalSTRS may sit relative to kind of a somewhat more competitive marketplace, if you will. So if you've ever interacted with Apple or Amazon, you can kind of see where their Net Promoter Score is. Same exact methodology, just a slightly differently worded question. There are some financial services firms here kind of hovering around 0. And then, again, don't know how you feel about Facebook, but their score is particularly low at minus 21.
So that's like is that a customer service? Like how well I think Amazon.
Well, it's really just, it's their referral, right? How likely are you to refer Amazon to a friend or family member, right? And so, like I said, we augmented the question a little bit. But that's where these scores are coming from, is how likely are you to recommend Apple to a friend or family member, or how likely are you to recommend Amazon or Microsoft, or Morgan Stanley or HBO? And that's, so, and like I said, we changed the question somewhat, but just to put the score in kind of a reference range, this is where it sits. Okay. And then finally, a very important question, members are asked, how satisfied are you with your retirement overall? Nearly 9 out of 10 members say that they are very satisfied with their retirement. And so as it relates to our mission here at CalSTRS, I think that's a good outcome to see that that high percentage of members are satisfied with their retirement.
And that means with their retirement savings? That means with their retirement?
Just their retirement.
Like
it's just
generally?
a very simple question. Yeah, just very simple. How satisfied are you with your retirement?
Okay.
And it's just a similar scoring from 1 up to 7, and then these are the 6s and the 7s.
And Tom, one of the things when I was reading through this, I was wondering how much sort of the economic fluctuations influence people's, like obviously COVID to some degree, although I feel like I saved a lot during COVID, but interest rates, and I know even retirees were concerned about, just a higher cost of living and prices and things like that. So I know it's going to be impossible for us to figure that out, but I was just kind of curious how much that influences, or how much we think that might influence how our members respond to this stuff.
Well, quite a bit, actually. That's what I was suggesting with the relationship between confidence and satisfaction, for example, and it's kind of bleed through to the rest of the responses as well.
Yeah.
Because this is a retrospective look, and so the members receive the survey in January, and they look back over the previous year, but then it's hard to separate from what's going on currently, again, when you're sort of staring down the potential for a recession, high interest rates, inflation. Everybody's got their own index, right? My wife, my wife does like Trader Joe's index, stuff at Trader Joe's just went up, you know what I mean? And so I know things are more expensive, and I know that's how a lot of people sort of assimilate this information, right?
It is true.
When you see the stuff you buy all the time.
Yeah, exactly.
Like that almond butter is like $2 more. Yeah.
Yes,
no,
exactly.
Definitely.
So everybody's got their own personal index, and what we're finding via the data is that it is influencing some of these, scores generally. But then again, you come back to the actual point of service scores. In the moment, because the members are receiving, very great service from the representatives, and they're responding as such.
Interesting. Okay. I have a question from Karen. Other committee members, if you have any questions or comments, feel free. But go ahead, Karen.
Hi, thanks. I always think this is the best committee also. So
Me too.
With Sharon. I have some questions on each of the figures, so if I can do it that way, it would be more methodical.
Yeah, go ahead.
Figure 5. Was that question like yes or no?
Let me pull that
Which
one up.
page?
The
Can you give a
engagement.
page
I'm not
number,
sure.
Karen?
It's page 7 of the
Presentation?
write-up. Figure 5, engagement score increases.
I gotcha.
It's different from your slide, so.
Yeah, let me take a look at that. And Karen, you said it was page 5, the one that you're looking at?
Page 5 of the, no,
Okay.
actually, page 7 of the write-up.
Page 7 of the item. Okay.
Figure 5.
Figure 5. Yeah, so engagement score increases when interacting with CalSTRS. And so again, those members who have interacted with us, not even necessarily directly, like with our staff, the choices, so the point of service data that I showed you earlier from Bill and his staff, that was direct interaction with staff. The options that we provide on the survey are things like, did you visit mycalstrs.com or calstrs.com, or did you read a newsletter from us? So there's a multitude of different ways they could have, quote unquote, interacted with us relative to the survey. Just by selecting yes on those, that actually increases their satisfaction, increases their engagement with CalSTRS.
Okay, got it. Okay. And then on page 9 of the write-up, at the top, figure 7.1. Now, I think I asked you this before the meeting. The two colors of gray confused me, and I just thought it was just my eyes playing a trick on me, but you said they were exactly the same
They are the same gray,
shade.
yes. And so that was kind of swing and a miss on that one. I was actually trying to make it simpler to interpret these images by just highlighting the current year and then the 2 prior years. Because initially my staff had put this together and it was a lot of different colors. And I'm like, oh, maybe I'll try to simplify, simple kind of elegant presentation here. But looks like the old boss should not have stepped in and should have just let the staff do their work the right way the first time. But anyway, yeah, it's left to right chronologically. And so
well, I figured
21
that
and
out,
22, yeah.
Because of the way it was moving. So anyway, so thank you. And then same page at the bottom, figure 7.2. The last question, CalSTRS listens to its members. That made me really sad. That's the result of that. It's only 50% of them think that we don't listen to them.
Yeah,
so,
and it would be a coin flip in this case.
Okay. All right. What's
7.2.
Yeah, the last
page
bar,
9.
the last question. That made me sad. So what did it do to you and your team? I mean, what did
They were on the floor, bouncing like these. No. I mean, it's a good question.
Okay.
Like, I think the question would be like, so how do
we fix it? How do we make it better?
in the benefits and services arena, what do we do with numbers like this in response to it to help those numbers move in the right direction?
Yeah, it's something that I could talk about with Bill and with Karen, our communications director, and
Bill's coming up right now.
explore different ways to expand those options.
Because we don't want Karen to be sad, Bill. We want her to be happy.
Definitely do not. I think one of the things that Tom was talking about when we mentioned point of service surveying, the difficulty comes in a broad-based question like this.
Right.
I mean, I could give you a hypothetical example that with some of the very spirited beliefs on both sides, divestment, for instance.
Mm-hmm.
So if there is the perception that we are not listening relative to that, that could be an answer to that response.
But we don't know anything beyond that, how deep they're thinking or whatever. It's just because that question is there and they answer it and gave it a number.
Data, yes.
Okay.
Right. What we do, however, in any engagement with our members is we do ask pointed questions, be it specific to a disability experience. We're starting surveys in survivor benefit as well.
Okay.
With beneficiaries, we do that with the service retirement process. Pretty much every area, with all of our engagements in the member service centers, and certainly the contact center as well.
So we dig a little bit deeper then.
We dig a lot deeper in trying to find out where we can improve our interaction with our members, and ideally, the attempt on our part is to exceed expectations.
Of course.
But it starts with trying to understand where there may be a potential gap. So there's a limit to what these types of surveys can ask, as far as trying to dig deeper and tell us a little more and open question, of course, could answer that. Tell us a little bit more about how we fell short of your expectations. Because clearly, when you look at, some of our consistent data in the last few years, in our touch points across the member service centers, in our in-person interactions, in our telephonic interactions, it would indicate that our members are pretty happy. I personally, I tell this to my staff, across 25 years and 4 industries, I have never seen satisfaction scores in the mid-90s with the number that Tom was referring to. Low 90s, I've seen. Mid-90s, it's very hard to get 95% of everyone surveyed saying they're highly satisfied. So, but that, as our director of contact center operations, Shani says, it's not a reason why we don't continually strive to do even better.
Good.
But it does require us to understand a little bit about where we can raise the bar and meet expectations. It's hard to answer a question like that.
So Bill, is it all right if I add on to yours, Karen?
Sure.
Because I think, again, I want Karen to be happy, and more importantly, I want our counselors members to be happy with the service they get. Where and how do we hear, Bill, from the different, like with disability or whoever, when or the call center, when our members are surveyed after those calls? When do we as a board hear those stats? Or I assume somewhere you guys take all that information, and then do we get to hear that?
Well, from my understanding, years before I was here, it was actually presented to board. It is on the annual benefits and services accomplishments report. So it's a consent item where there's a lot of data on how all of the divisions do on all their key performance indicators, including things such as how satisfied our members are in those various divisions across all the divisions.
Because I would maybe request, and I saw you, Cassandra, so happy to have you amend my request. But I just think, given the turnover on our board, and I think just it would be really interesting to get a little, instead of a consent agenda, to maybe have a little more insight into the different touch points we have with our members on a customer service level and benefits and services, and whenever appropriate, to hear that feedback or to kind of get some of those stats, and then maybe have you and your team help interpret that.
Yeah, we can certainly add a lot more. It can be as brief as a stoplight chart.
Right.
Or we can add more color to it by speaking to some of the results.
Yeah.
We look at those closely throughout the year, but it's one of, I fully understand how large those packets of information are, including the consent items. So we can bring it to the forefront and certainly
maybe just as an educational item for this year,
Sure.
as we're even looking at the work plan, it's fairly, we're not super heavy. And I wonder if it could be an educational point to kind of understand the different areas of benefits and services, how we interact with our members, and then at the right time to hear kind of what is the constructive feedback we're getting. And on top of the research department, understanding what Tom's role and his team's role is, in addition to the work that you guys do, to kind of have maybe a little more granular
Definitely.
take at it,
we can
if the
certainly
committee
do that.
would be open to that idea. And go ahead, Cassandra.
Yeah, we're evaluating the customer experience life cycle anyway, and so this would be a really good presentation from the results that we learned from that and from what we've done in the past and what we plan to do in the future. So I think that would be excellent to tie that in together. And then I had a question on this, Tom, and I was wondering do we ever see a result of these responses go up or down associated with anything that's happening in the general environment with their population? Because, I mean, I know that this wasn't associated with the PBI incident, or the security incident, but I would think that maybe if something was going on, whether it be communication that had been sent out or something was happening, does that ever impact these?
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly possible that it could. There's no specific questions around specific issues or incidents like PBI, for example. On the survey, it's more general, again, like confidence and satisfaction, and have you interacted with us, and in what way. And so.
Yeah, I thought about that.
Yes, they
too.
would. I think that's what we're seeing, which is why I sort of juxtaposed with the point of service, which again is when they are directly in front of us, their satisfaction is very, very high. But then when they're taking these retrospective surveys, there's just these other influences that could influence their response to some of these questions.
I just have one more, if I could. Okay, this is the final one on the last page, 15, the Net Promoter Score comparisons. It was interesting when CalSTRS appears as number 4 in that list, but if the question is, would you recommend CalSTRS to a friend or buddy or whatever, right? If you're a teacher and you got this, or you're a retired teacher and you got this survey, you're going to be, it kind of doesn't match that you're going to recommend it to like a social worker or, you know, a doctor or somebody like
course,
that.
yeah.
So how does that work, and how does that coincide with, you know, if that question, does that make sense to even have CalSTRS in there if you're going to do it to only teachers?
Yeah, and so like I was saying, it's a little bit of a round hole square peg, so we augment the question somewhat. So the
Right.
traditional question is, how likely are you to recommend your bank to a
Right,
friend?
right. Okay, I got
And so
that.
then we change the question, so the way that the member, the respondent sees the question is, how likely are you to recommend / promote CalSTRS as a great organization?
Okay.
So it's a slightly
Okay.
different
Yeah, I
wording of
didn't
it.
hear that part, so
Yeah.
thank you.
So slightly different wording. So again, it's just an opportunity because what it does is it does provide a measure that then we can kind of sort of compare outside of the building, if you will.
Okay.
Engagement is what is a measure that we created in-house, and we've been tracking it for a while now. But it's just harder to get that kind of
Yeah.
score from other systems or anywhere else. And then even satisfaction items, you know, I think companies sort of keep that close to the vest. You know, NPS is out there because it was sort of developed for the private sector, and a lot of different companies developed it. So getting that benchmarking, if you will, is just, it's readily available. And so it's not a perfect fit, but it seems kind of good enough, you know, so.
All right. Thank you, Madam Chair.
One final thing that I think
Sure, go
I
ahead,
will
Bill.
add, only because Cassandra happened to mention it. In the coming year, you will actually be hearing a lot more on customer experience, member experience, and we're specifically using customer experience because we're looking not only at our educators, but also the school districts as a unique customer segment of employer services, our beneficiaries. So we have multiple customer segments, and we are going to be exploring that in great length, and we'll be bringing you more of that as the year progresses.
Great. Thank you, Bill. Appreciate that. And thank you, as always, Tom. Appreciate you and your team's work. Thank you. Okay, and with that, I think, Bill, do you want to highlight anything from our next? Wait, do I have this? Oh, yeah, there we go. Sorry, I'm looking at the next. So our next Benefits and Services meeting is going to be in January. So do you want to highlight? We're going to have Kate LeBlanc. Kate, you're in the room. I heard you're an Orange Theory person too, by the way. We need to talk afterwards. I'm addicted, so yes, we'll talk.
We'll be having Todd Buffalo come back next January to
Got it.
talk
So
about the
Tom's
teachers'
talking about
enrollment.
trends.
Yep.
Great. And then
Kate will
Kate's
be,
going to talk about member outreach, educational strategy. And I think what we'll do, Bill, between now and then, you and I will talk more about the innovation strategies piece.
The group to start that discussion.
Great. As Cassandra's been teeing off innovation for the staff team, and I on behalf of the Benefits and Services Committee, I have lots of ideas. Sometimes I don't want to say them in open session because I don't want to get anyone's hopes up, but I certainly, I think we should be innovative and thoughtful about how to serve our members and how to think about retirement security and financial awareness. And so I want to encourage our team to be innovative. I also want to encourage our committee to also be partners in innovation and in terms of creative thinking. I have lots of friends on other teacher pension boards around the country who are doing interesting things. I realize sometimes the politics is different. Sometimes You know, we all get the, you know, why it might be different in other places, but I also think there's some really interesting ideas out there that I'd like us to at least, you know, have a discussion about. It doesn't mean that we have to walk down that road, but so looking forward to that conversation and hearing what staff come up with on Monday. Karen, what did you want
Just
to add?
one more thing.
Sure.
In Diligent, the other day, I happened to look on Diligent under the resource section, and then I noticed
Diligent
that.
all week long. I love this. You've
No,
been watching videos.
but you know what?
I love it.
I didn't know that it was there. So anyway, so when I clicked on it, I was looking for
I love
something
it.
else, and I accidentally saw that there's a Benefits and Services Annual Accomplishment Report for fiscal 22-23, and it was posted on August the 9th.
There you go.
But it kind of snuck in there, and I didn't know that, and I don't know if anybody else noticed it either. So, I mean, when these things get posted, do you let us know that it's posted? Or does it just automatically happen?
I know that the process for the last couple of years has been for this in particular, the accomplishments report.
Right.
It uploads to Diligent as a consent item, but yeah, we can make sure to remedy that and
Yeah, if a
notify
quick
you.
email or something to let us know that, hey, this was posted,
Absolutely.
take a
Sure.
look or something like that. I
Yeah,
think that would
that's
be
a great
helpful.
idea,
Thank you.
Karen. I
And
got to
if
get
we're
on
presenting
Diligent
on
more.
it, then
Give you more work.
Yeah, exactly. I like it, Karen. That's great. All right. Great. Okay, Chris, what did you, I heard just one information request.
For item 3, there's a request for additional information and statistics related to the results of the member survey to better understand member responses.
Great. Okay. Anything else? I think we are done. It's been a day. Cassandra, do you have any last comments before we adjourn?
public
Sorry,
comments.
public
Yeah,
comments.
that's it.
Sorry, my apologies. Is there any public comment? Happy to hear from the public if you want. Okay, Diane said no? Okay. So thank you. I want to just thank the public for your engagement. It really matters a lot to have our public. I know some of you come from a long ways away and sit in those chairs for all day. And so thank you, public, for coming and being engaged in our conversations. Sometimes they're interesting and challenging and difficult, but hopefully it gives you a flavor of how seriously this board takes the work that we do. So thank you today. And for those of you who are not coming back, you know, blessings on you. And I believe appeals, Madam Chair of Appeals, what time are we starting tomorrow?
We're going to go into quick open session, and then we'll go into closed session. Hopefully, our time frame is like from 9 to 12. So hopefully, we'll have, ample time to do the work that we need to do. So thank you very much,
All right.
everyone.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.